So part 4, welcome back. We're still snipping up the slides because they won't all upload in one go. I'm sorry, but that's what I have to do. So we were talking about Viagra having different names. It's got its sildenafil is its generic or scientific name or non-proprietary name, and then it's called sildenafil or Viagra or Vivatio. And then it's also got another name. So the World Health Organization gives things this number and letter name, and that they call it the Anatomical Therapeutic Chemical Classification System. So just be aware that there is another name for things. You should only really need that if you go to work somewhere where the World Health Organization are established. So if they have a big sort of tent for a load of refugees or something like that, or you go to work somewhere like Kent, and we're taking a lot of sort of people across from where they've been sort of in like refugee status or things like that. So just be aware that if they come across and they're on like this name, sort of drug like that format, it's a World Health Organization name, and there'll be a book and you'll be able to look it up. And that's what it's called. So we don't need another look at that one. So drugs can be classified in different ways. It just makes it easier that we talk about them in that sort of way. So you can talk about them as they are supplied. So you can talk about them as a POM drug or a P or a GSL. Let me run through that. A POM drug is a prescription-only medicine. And so for that, you have to go and get a prescription from a healthcare practitioner who's done the prescribing course. To do a prescribing course, you have to have the authorization of your work and have some governance in place. So not every paramedic is now eligible for that, but that's just by and by. So medicines are given a POM status because they are either dangerous or they need a little bit more investigation in order to confirm that that definitely is what's going on and that's what that medicine is needed for. And things like sort of morphine, we don't want that out in the general population unless you really need it. They're given a POM, so you need a prescription, somebody sensible to go, oh yes, that's what it is, and you can have these. And it will restrict how much you can have. Then we get pharmacy status, and that is for medicines where you just need a little bit more of insight into giving it. So something where there's a sort of infection that needs to be just drilled down into a little bit more to be able to say that's what it is and what you need. And it might be that it's something that you can just get a small amount of. Normally it would be a prescription, but you can get a P for it if you just get a couple of days worth of supply of it. So things like omeprazole are now available as a P. And then the last category is general sales list. So they are things, so like a pharmacy drug, you need the pharmacy to give a nod and say it's okay. General sales list can be sold from anywhere that they can close their premises. So they shouldn't be sold from things like market stores or in tents or things like that because you can't lock your premises. But they can be sold at sort of petrol stations, Asda, supermarkets, or things like that. And they are ones that we want available. We want people to be able to treat themselves. After all, drugs do make us better. Our quality of life is better. So we want medicines out there. We just need to be careful with them. So P and GSL, that makes up your over-the-counter medicines. So if you're talking about an over-the-counter one, it's either a P or a GSL. That can cover those two. We can also talk about things as being either a small molecule or a biopharmaceutical. Now, most of your medicines you have out there are small molecules. So things like sort of tablets and things like that, they'll be a small molecule and they'll be made by sort of chemical manufacturing. Biopharmaceuticals are sort of the new kid on the block now, and they're generally sort of proteins. They're generally kept in the fridge. They're generally injectables because if you take them by mouth, then your stomach breaks them down thinking it's a nice tasty protein. So they have to be kept in the fridge. And there are a lot of these around now. They are very, very expensive. So if you see a patient that's on those, then have a high suspicion of index that they're quite poorly at times. So if you see an asthmatic and they're on something and that they inject and get out of the fridge, then suddenly, run for a chair quickly, get them in and start drilling down to how many times they've been in intensive care and how they've arrested and things like that. So just be aware of those ones. Nobody puts anyone on an expensive medicine unless they're really sick and need it. Then we can talk about route of administration. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in another of my little snipped up lectures. So you can give things in different ways. You can talk about it being an injectable or an IM medicine or an orally administered medicine, things like that. Then we can talk about what biological system they worked in. So I did have a little picture and had to snip it out, but what system it works in. So it could be a sort of neurological medicine. And within that, there's so many different types. So that if you imagine a Venn diagram with all the overlaying circles and things being sort of a hypnotic or a sedative and things like that, there's lots of different things that we can talk about it as a neurodrug, and then the therapeutic effects of what it does to you. So that's how we talk about medicines.